If I could please call the Mehlville School District Board of Education June 6th meeting to order. If we could stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll do a roll call. Tori Belke. Here. Scott Hugerich.
Here.
Patrick McKelvey.
Present.
Jean Preto. Here. Jeff Woolman.
Here.
Grace Wright is absent, and I'm Peggy Hessler. If I could please get a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, we do not have anyone signed up for open period for patron comments, so we will move on to governance. Washington Middle School security entrance bid, Mike Gegg.
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Mike Gegg, Director of Facilities. I'm here tonight to present on a new security entrance for Washington Middle School. The scope of this project includes relocation of the main office and the addition of a new security entrance. This project will be paid for through the Facilities Prop S capital budget. I would like to move to approve the lowest qualified bid submitted by Aspire Construction Service in the amount of $973,636, which includes professional, contingency, and all other fees. With that said, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? There are questions on e-boards, pre-meeting questions. If I could please get a motion to approve the lowest qualified bid by Aspire Construction Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any conversation around that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Next is Academic Data Dashboard, Dr. Brian Smith.
Good evening, Board of Education. I am Brian Smith, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and Dashboard Update. So you'll see here from the text of the slides, and I'll try to be very brief in terms of what I say to allow any questions that you may have. We continue to emphasize the use of data within our classrooms, within our buildings, and within the district. We are beginning to better utilize one of our tools called Frontline Education. It's the Forecast 5 data site that allows us to be able to build customized dashboards. And so we know that data needs to be clean and easy to understand and concise. And so we are in the process of developing a dashboard or multiple dashboards to provide information at an easy to use pace for both you as well as our building principals and our central office administrators. We're currently starting with our benchmark data as well as student assessment data, historical, longitudinal data, but we are going to obviously be looking at building additional phases of that as well through attendance, through breaking down grades, A, B, C, D, F, 3s, 2s, and 1s when we get into standards-based. So we are beginning the process of really doing a deep dive and a build out of some of these dashboards. We have evolved in that process from where we were at even just a few years ago, and what you would have seen is something similar to this visual that you can see here, where you would have seen a table. And this is probably very familiar information to you. You've probably seen things like this. This would have been an example from a state report card. Or you may have seen things that look kind of like this. This is a part of a file that Marshall and I share with regards to attendance data, because not only does it impact from an accountability standpoint, it also impacts us from a financial standpoint. So the sharing of data is something that we're used to, and seeing it in various forms is something that we are also used to. This is another example from that accountability end of what attendance would look like in a 90-90 setting. But as we evolve with regards to our data, we recognize that our data needs to tell a story. And so part of that story is not only just the numbers behind it, but also the logic behind it, as well as the graphs and the colors and the visuals behind that too. So one of the things I want to just show you and highlight for you is this is kind of a sneak peek of what these future dashboards are going to look like, is you're going to see graphs that look like this. Potentially this was an example of our ELA iReady scores from fall and from winter and from spring. This was another example of iReady. You can see a little bit of a difference there, just in terms of from one graph to another graph, depending on what the content specifically is of the graph. Or school over school information, where you can start to see comparatives very quickly, and you can start to highlight both some of those glows as well as some of those grows. Or you can see it like this, where maybe you're looking for growth over time in every place, and very quickly maybe you can see where something didn't stand out the way you would want it to. So as we move forward with regards to our data dashboards, one of the things we want to make sure that we focus on is moving forward, and moving forward fast and accurate. And so these dashboards have been something that Dr. Diwali and our data and assessment department have been working on and will continue to work on. We do plan to have more information for you, and you'll start to see these in both my strategic plan presentations in the future, as well as future presentations that do involve data. Anything that's going to be student related, we hope to be able to have that through our dashboard and make it readily available and clean and easy to understand. So that's all that I have. Tonight was more of an update than anything else, but if you have any questions. So no action is necessarily needed by the Board of Education tonight.
Will Infinite Campus make this easier to provide this data to us?
I don't know the answer to that yet, since we haven't necessarily lived a day in the life in that yet. I don't know if it'll be honestly easier or more difficult than what CIS would be. The one thing we did have about CIS was just historical knowledge of how that looked over a long period of time. So I'm hoping so, but I simply don't know the answer to that yet.
And that's historical data in SIS will move into Infinite Campus, so we'll still have the same data store?
We will still have the same data, and we have the ability to have 3-year snippets or 5-year snippets, and we have the ability in which to be able to put filters in terms of the data to be able to make it a little bit more customizable. So not only can it be seen from a district level, the drill downs can then also be able to show that same data at a building level.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody that helped with this initiative. I think the standardization of data reporting from school to school is really helpful for us and the community to see how we're doing. One question, is it possible, and you might not know the answer on this right now, and it might not be technically possible, but if the school improvement plans for each school were to be included in this, then we could see annually what each school is working on and how that relates to their pertaining data. So is it possible to combine or to have all of those school improvement plans integrated into this system so we can see?
I think the collection of the school improvement plans, that already exists. Now the data behind it will be something that I think that we'll have to look at in terms of building out potentially in phases. Some of the things that are measurable, I would not have any issue with at all. Some of the things that may be more, when you think about data, not everything, you can quantify it. So some of it's going to be, quality versus the quantifying of data. So that will be a piece that some of the goals may not be as measurable as maybe what any of us would like to see from a graph or a bar graph or a line graph perspective. But I do think that a lot of things are possible. And so I don't have all the answers to that right now, but I think what I do know is that our process has evolved very quickly, and I think we'll continue to be able to evolve to try to meet the needs of the Board of Education as well as our community.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I like the idea of measurable SIP goals. I do, but really more than anything, if all of the SIP goals are posted in the system, and if we see school A is maybe underperforming a little bit in math, then it would be a clear indication to see, okay, they're working on it because look at their SIP goal.
Most of the information that I believe that you're asking for, I believe already exists. It's just in the way that we would store our individual plans and how that is communicated, I think both to you as well as to our community.
Correct.
But I think that's a piece that we can have a conversation about, yes.
Yeah, I looked for them on individual school websites, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. And then a lot of times, especially near the end of the year, if a school is presenting at the end of the year, they're presenting us what their SIPS goals were, that they were working on the whole year. And unless we would have physically requested it, we would have no idea what they're working on.
Sure. I think I saw Dr. Hogg taking a couple notes, so I have a feeling that will be something that we will have some conversations about.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one comment. I love it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think it's moving in the right direction. I
I'm sure it'll be tweaked along the way, but it's what we want to see and what we need to see, so, thank you.
Yes, I agree. And I have more questions, but I feel like we're going to learn them as we go. And since there's no clear plan on who will have access to what data and what information, and where will it all be cumulative in one spot and individual schools in another spot, those are all the little, but I'm sure that's still being planned out, so I'll save my, I mean, do you guys remember when we did this about 9 years ago, and it never really, I don't think any of you guys were even here yet, but it was a data dashboard, but it never really
They never
worked.
revealed where they were.
Yeah,
where
it
they
was-
were going or where they are now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was like,
So this is what I think we wanted to see back then, but, so we appreciate your coming back at it and doing it differently with a different lens, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, next is the nurses 2024-25 MOU, Dr. Jeffrey Hogg.
All right, good evening, Board of Education. My name is Jeff Hogg. I'm the superintendent, and I'll present this evening on behalf of Dr. Pike, who is with her daughter in Texas on college visits. So that's much more important than being here. So I'll give this report this evening. So again, just wanted to give a quick update on the ratification or the unanimous ratified agreement between the Mehlville Healthcare Professional Association and the Mehlville School District. I'll give you some highlights, but that was unanimously ratified by the MHPA on Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. So some highlights of that. MHPA salary increases were analyzed, and they continue to maintain competitive for the recruitment and retention of that group. On average, that'll be about a 3.85 to 3.9% increase over that time for next year. So everybody will get that step, and they will move on there. They'll continue their education. The district will fund memberships for any nurse wishing to join the Missouri Association of School Nurses and/or St. Louis Suburban School Nurses Association. And then the work year, their length of the building nurse RN and building nurse LPN contract shall not exceed 182 days. That's what it is this year. 182 working days will include 5 self-directed work days prior to the first day of student attendance, 2 professional development days, and 1 self-directed workday to support nurses' personalized professional growth. What that looks like is on November 4th and November 5th, that'll include an option for self-directed remote work for the professional development day for the nurses. Excuse me. And that coincides with what we're doing with our teachers and allowing them that remote work time as well. And then January 3rd will be an in-person personal professional development day. And then the last thing, salary schedule placement for the 24-25 school year. MHPA employees will receive 5 years or more experience when we place starting at step 6. That brings this group in alignment with our other classified staff that we bring in at step 5, or 5 years experience, and they start at step 6. So that brings them into the group, into, I guess, alignment with that. Really do want to thank both teams. They spent quite a bit of time negotiating this. So whether that was our negotiating team on the district side or the MHPA team, we want to thank both groups and are proud of the work that they did. We're very proud of the work that our nurses do for our students on a daily basis. And you guys know that when those reports go out. So that concludes my presentation. We would be looking for the board to approve the 24-25 collective bargaining agreement this evening. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Can I get a motion to approve the nurses 24-25 MOU?
So, second.
Does anybody have any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, next up is set budget to actual and approved fund transfers. Marshall Crutcher.
I'm Marshall Crutcher, the CFO, and I am setting the budget to actual and fund transfers. So this is what we do annually. I'm asking the board to approve setting the final budget to actual. We don't expect to have any significant operating expense variances. And then the other part of this is the transfers. The transfers are noted on the agenda write-up, but those have really effectively already been approved in prior existing budget amendments but this just more clearly, transparently details out the key transfers that were made this year. So really with that, are there any questions before we move to try to approve this?
I have a general question, not so much about the setting things as you stated. By the way, thank you for projecting the capital expenditures over the next 5 years. I think it was very helpful, at least for me, to see what we were going to do with HVAC and how those expenditures were going to be handled over the next 5 years. So one of the things that was kind of keying in on were the additional capital projects that we are calling Prop S unfunded other TBD that is under Fund 410. And I do want to say also that I really like the way this is structured. As an individual citizen, I would absolutely vote in favor of the way this is structured. But at the same time, we know that there was a lot of, or there was some portion of our public that was unhappy the fact that we did not roll taxes back to what the limit was for the Hancock Amendment. So I'm really kind of looking at taking their thoughts and considerations into this and see what kind of measures we could take moving forward prior to setting the tax rate in September. If I'm calculating things correctly, and Marshall, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the total for the Prop S unfunded projects is coming in at about $41 million.
Yeah, can I interject that, would you want to discuss this on that third agenda item with the final budget?
This is related to the
You're on
budget,
you're on
not
the
fund
wrong part of the
transfers,
agenda.
Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're 2 items ahead.
All right, my problem, thank you. All right, then we can pause that.
Okay. I will remember that question, though.
All right, thank
when we
you.
get to
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, back to 5D governance. Marshall has explained, and the rationale for why we will do this is mainly to comply with state laws and audit requirements, correct? So all of that rationale is listed clearly in e-boards for the public to see. And the financial impact in this particular instance is basically nothing will change the total expenditures of the district, but will change balances of individual funds. And those funds are listed clearly in e-boards for everyone to see. So that being said, if I could please get a motion to approve setting the budget to actual and approve fund transfers as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, moving on. So governance 5E, June fiscal year 24 budget adjustment, Marshall Crutcher.
All right, on this budget amendment, really all that's changed, we had discussed, we were coming in at the forecast last board meeting for this year, and it was around a $853,000 net loss on the operating side. So this budget adjustment, when you look at the detailed revenues and expenses, it really includes all of those items that we've pretty much already talked about through the forecast number of last board meeting, and that really about the only thing that's changed is the day after the board meeting last month, the very morning after, I got an email from Desi with an update on the sales tax reimbursement, which increases our sales tax revenue this current school year by about $1.1 million. So that's why, and then there's a few other adjustments. So that's why that 853 net loss has now come down to $234,000 net loss, so that's good news. So that's really the only other update I have on these budget adjustments. So are there any questions?
Anybody have any? No? And same as the last thing on the budget, for the public's view, The executive summary really summarizes everything, and Marshall also summarizes the financial impact on the agenda on e-boards. So if I could please get a motion to approve the budget amendment as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, it's the Marshall show tonight. Moving on to F, final fiscal year 2025 budget, Marshall Crutcher.
All right, on the final budget here, really, the fiscal year 25 budget numbers have not changed at all since the last board meeting, so there are no other updates. But to take Scott's question and comment, to follow up on that, if you look at the capital schedules, there's a couple of orange highlighted cells on each year of the capital schedules in 25, 26, 27, 28. And when you look at those orange highlighted cells of unfunded Prop S capital projects, and you add those years up, they're around $40 to $45 million of potential money that could be free, not guaranteed. Like I said, the day after last month's board meeting, I end up getting an extra $1 million from the government. So you don't know when you're going to have pluses, when you're going to have minuses, but right now, with the knowledge we have today, that's the projections for the total unfunded capital S projects. And what we're doing right now is to develop a process for this summer and involve the facilities steering committee, but we don't even have that process fully outlined yet, and we still have to present it to Dr. Hogg. And so we're in the process of working on that. The ultimate goal is on the August board meeting to hopefully have some information. It probably would not be final decisions of all prioritizing, but it will have hopefully a lot of information of what could potentially be spent on that $40 to $45 million. And we'll just have to see what progress we would make, and what the final process is going to be. Like I said, we need to still work through that with Dr. Hogg, but that's the goal, is to have some meaningful information to you on the August board meeting for that capital project money, which would then help you moving forward for the September tax rate hearing.
So, thank you, and my apologies for jumping the gun. So yeah, I mean, if we look at the $45 million of expenditures, again, I think this is a very well laid out plan, and like I said, as an individual citizen, I would be all for this, but really my vote on the tax levy as a board member would be to mirror what the majority of the public would want. I believe the majority of the public would be in favor of us keeping all of this, but I simply don't know. I have no idea. In general, like I think it would be really good for us to make some sort of effort beyond the August meeting to bring this information in a very clear and concise way so that we are gathering information and data from the general public on their thoughts on this.
Yeah, like I said, there's a process, and we haven't really even been able to discuss all of those processes with Dr. Hogg, but one of the possibilities of this would be to include some kind of a survey that would, possibly achieve some of those results that you're talking about. But really, I don't want to say too much until we get to talk to Dr. Hogg to even decide what the process is going to be.
I love the idea of a survey. I think that's the best way to get a broad section of ideas on this. And like I said, I really applaud yourself and everybody else who put the plan together, because I think it's very well thought out, and I also like the idea that you're projecting it through the next 5 years. But $45 million is a lot of money. And literally, if we rolled back the taxes, it's my understanding that the money that we collected beyond, because we were able to tax beyond the limit on the Hancock Amendment, was $4.7 million annually. So, over 5 years, that equates to $23.5 million. So you know, that's a decent amount of money. And I also understand that per the emails that we had, I think it's approximately a little over $100 of assessed, of tax, right, for a $300,000 assessed home. So again, I know that that's not a huge burden in theory on a lot of taxpayers in our district, but I just don't want to assume that everybody would be in favor of that.
Yeah, though, there's a lot of discussions to take place, and, you know, one of the things that everybody has to keep in mind, I'll always go back to the finance dashboard. You know, we're now up to 18th place in tax rate. We're 21st or 22nd in debt per student. So most schools will fund these types of projects through bonds where you have to pay interest, and that's debt. But if we can tackle these projects without a GO bond and not incur interest, that's how we stay at 21st on debt. So, you know, if we don't tackle these projects this way, then another way is just increase the debt and incur expense and be less efficient in tackling these projects. So that's another.
That's why I love the plan so much. Who wants to pay interest?
Right.
You know?
So something to consider, Scott, is, and I agree with you, getting the public feedback is great, and I always agree with that. But, you know, so what Marshall was discussing are capital projects that going back how many years, when before we ever passed Prop S, we did lots of surveys and lots of studies and worked 18 months with a steering committee to put those projects in place, where they identified $235 million in needs, and we only passed $35 million. So Marshall's proposal is to take that extra funds and start hopefully putting it back into capital projects that are obviously very much needed for safety and security of our students still. And have already been identified.
Yeah.
And then we've gone back to the drawing board to make cuts, where we reconvene this large steering facility committee made up of residents, parents, administrators, and staff. So I think the current, and those were going to be some of my questions, when will that happen? But as you explained in your presentation, it's preliminary, we don't know for sure. But I believe that that's the goal, is to pull that steering committee back together. And while I don't disagree with surveying the community to some extent, you're kind of reinventing, I mean, why spin the wheels that we've already spun? We already know the needs. They're still there because we weren't able to tackle them with Prop S. As far as the tax, I mean, we didn't change the tax rate. The tax rate is what it was the assessed values that went up. So, but the way you said it implied.
I might have misspoken.
Implied that we raised the taxes, and that's not what happened.
No.
Tax rate's the same, and assessed value was raised. I understand your concept, and I understand what you're saying, but just to be clear, that's the that's the situation.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I voted very, very much in favor of that, you know. So I thought the decision that we made then was well thought out.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there weren't people that were upset about it, and there were people. So that's all I'm saying is I just want to get as much information about this prior to us voting on the tax rate in September. And that's specifically, it's not so much the need, it's more about the community's desire to fund it like this.
Yeah, but
That's really it.
Here's a point you're missing, and this is a point that Marshall just brought up. We're 18th on the tax rate. There are 4 districts that are under us on tax rate: Rockwood, Parkway, Kirkwood, and Ladue. Rockwood's assessed value per student is basically the same as us. The other 3 are 2 to 2.5 times us. So they can have lower tax rates, and their assessed values buoy up their income from taxes, because their assessed value they're collecting on that is significantly higher. So we can adjust the tax rate downwards, as you're implying, but then all that's doing is removing revenue from us that is likely to also get cut starting in '26 when senior tax rate freezes happen, because Senate Bill 756 cleared up the language to a degree. And that's probably going to start moving that forward with speed and direction when most most counties, and St. Louis County being one of them, have been tiptoeing forward on cutting taxes for the seniors, especially since we're in a bedroom community, and that's where a lot of our revenue comes from, is property taxes from our community. So I would be careful trying to make statements that are for September before we have facts that fall into place between now and then.
I'm not in favor of rolling the taxes back. I mean,
You
I
implied that.
No. I said I would be in favor of voting the way that the majority of the public feels about this. I think this idea is very well thought out.
What information do you want from the community? That's what I'm confused.
Well, I mean, I think that last time, when they were upset, the people that were upset basically said that the general thought was that it wasn't communicated to them very well what we were doing, even though it was clearly discussed and open. But as we can see, there's nobody here. And there's probably not too many people watching the YouTube feed either. So, like, discussing it in open is a whole different thing than making an overt effort.
Right here's where I get confused. What would the discussion be about?
Well, the discussion would be about, so are you in favor of us doing this, which is maintaining the tax rate as it is? Or would you rather have us roll it back to a nominal amount that would be more consistent with what you thought you were approving before?
We couldn't do that until 26 anyway, could we, Marcia?
If we roll it back
If
this
you do
year.
roll back this year, it's a two-year lock-in, because you can't reverse it the following year if you do it this year. And just as a reminder, the Finance Committee are volunteers that live in the district, and they last year, recommended strongly to not roll back the taxes, so.
Okay, because I was my thoughts were that you were looking for new ideas for us to use it.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, it's whether or not the community actually wants us to keep it or give a small portion of it back to them.
Scott,
Going out
And
and
I
polling
wanna
the
keep it.
community is doing that. You're asking for essentially a new set of inputs on stuff that's happened and upcoming again in September. So you may not be thinking you're getting new input, but you're going to get it if you poll the community on this.
Well, that's what I want, is new
okay,
input from them.
but you realized it would be a Christmas miracle if we got 50%. So what are you going to do when we get 50% survey data? That's a miracle number if we get.
Well, but if that 50%
5%.
shows that they want us to keep it and use it towards these projects, then I would vote for it. If we only got
Even if you only
50%
got
respondents,
3% of the community?
if we only got 50% respondents and the majority of them said give the money back, then I would vote to roll back.
We're not going to get 50%. We're probably going to get less than 10.
It doesn't matter. You understand what I'm saying? The people that respond, whoever responds, if the majority of the people that respond say keep the money and spend it on these projects, that's what I would vote in favor of.
Should we do that for every vote?
No, but this is, Patrick, this is $40 to $45 million of money that's being spent.
I don't know.
And we know that there were people that were upset with the way that we set the tax rate last year.
But they were going to be upset regardless.
Yeah, people
I
will
don't
be
know.
upset no matter
We had an
what we
election
do
in
on it.
April.
They weren't upset with the process, they were upset with the outcome.
And frankly, we did not get one email. No one came to a board meeting. No one ever spoke to us, ever, to our faces. It was only talked about on social media. So while I don't disagree, I understand what you're saying, but, the public has to take some responsibility to speak to us. We are accessible. I return every single solitary email for the board or on behalf of the board, and I'm sure every other person on the board equally responds to emails, as do our administrators. So while I agree with you, you're saying I guess you're implying if how many people were against this. Do we really know that from 12
I have
people
no idea.
liking a like over and over and over and over again on Facebook? Because that's really, if you want to boil it down, the situation. That's what happened.
And
On
we
a
have-
very controversial Facebook page, a few people, and I have the numbers, in a spreadsheet, how many people liked what comments. And so, I mean, you know, I think you're kind of, I don't disagree with you. We need to listen to the public. Our number one priority is doing what's right for our kids and our school district. That's our job. And we do have to consider what the public wants and but, you know, making a blanket statement that so many people were against this, I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
A few very loud people were against it, but never once did they talk to us, look us in the eye, ask to talk to us, come to a meeting, or you know, I mean, you look at the Call newspaper, and that was what the editor's article was about, that nobody showed up to tell us that.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least I try to make my decisions based off of data, so I'm just suggesting that we collect some sort of data related to the public thought on this.
There was an election in April. All the incumbents said they would not roll back. All of the people who were not incumbents said they would roll back. It was a quorum of the board.
And we also have expenses we don't know about coming up the pipeline because of Senate Bill 727, because as that goes on, that's going to increase state spending. And with state income tax dropping in rates annually, that's less money that's potentially going to show up from state funding. So I would rather make sure that we're protecting our income sources, whatever they are, because they're going to be adjusted without our doing and out our say, except for the tax rate. We can't control assessed values. We can't control how the county is going to do property tax changes for seniors because they're mandated to do it. And we have no control over what the state's going to do for expenses that are going to be hitting state funding. So making adjustments to the income tax formula without really having any kind of forecasting in hand for what we're going to be paying down the road above and beyond 45 million of capital projects is not really doing our justice to make sure we're being financially prudent for the taxpayer.
And I think to like echo something that you have mentioned several times, Peggy kind of went back over it again, which was you were very pleased with how the plan was laid out and like the forecasting and moving forward with capital projects and how the money would be used. And I think maybe if like you put into context that as a board and as a school district, it's our job to make sure to do due diligence of communicating that so that people understand the context behind not just a number, whether that be $100 a year in taxes or this set amount of what the tax rate, you know, is, but more of how this money is utilized and everything else that, and I feel like it has been trickled over this period of time with, it will save us this amount of money. As Marshall had mentioned, you could tackle it another way. The capital projects aren't going away. The things that we need to do that haven't been done, that's not going away. If they don't get done, at some point they're still going to need to be done, or we continue to see our buildings, you know, fall apart. So how do we as a board operate in the best interest of the district, the students, the taxpayers, the money that is being funded to have good buildings? If we're not making smart decisions. But I think that it's all a part of like packaging that communication, right? I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean, I think if we lay it out that way, and we
and I
say.
think you don't think we have been though?
No,
Like,
no, no,
during
I'm
this time?
not saying that we haven't. I'm just saying that there was a percentage of our population that was upset about how we set the tax rate last time. That's all I'm saying. And I would like to make as much of an overt effort for them to be aware and for us to get some level of input from them about whether or not they agree with how we're laying this out. That's it. I like the plan. I really do. I just like input from the community because
know-
I don't want people to think that their ideas aren't considered.
They can give input right here.
You know what, Scott, I mean, and this is going to sound corny, but it's an analogy. You know, saving money is hard. You know, when I was coming up, my dad made me save every dollar so that I could buy my first car with cash. Financing it was out of the question, okay? And saving money is hard, okay? But it keeps you from having to pay interest, okay? So, but you do it because it's not the easy way out. The easy way out is to go borrow some money and then pay it off a little bit at a time. But the interest you pay, is wasted money. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. That's why our finance committee advised us strongly to do what we did, to avoid wasting money. So we did that. We followed their advice. We saved the district lots of money. I don't know how everyone keeps overlooking that fact. We saved the district lots of money,
I know, and I voted in favor of that.
you know.
And I like it. I do.
So I don't know where is the beef?
Okay, so the current agenda item, we can go ahead and motion to approve, and because none of these decisions get made until September.
That's correct.
So I would like to propose that we go ahead and make a motion to approve the fiscal year 25 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And then we can table that conversation for our next meeting, or we'll think it through ongoing. Okay? Thank you. All right. Action items by consent. Am I right?
Yes,
already
you
right.
are.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to action items by consent. If I could please get a motion to approve action items by consent.
Can I-
A through G,
Thank you.
but sorry, unless someone would like to pull anything.
F, please.
Okay, so if I can please get a motion to approve action items A through E and G.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay, so Scott pulled F, which is the SRO contract. So I believe I'm going to make a motion to approve the SRO contract as presented. If I could get a second, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay.
Second.
All right? Scott? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I guess the only reason that I wanted to pause on this just briefly to have a general discussion about it is I personally, I know other people in the community were a little shaken about the gun violence that happened by some of our students off campus. Had nothing to do with the district, clearly. And it was also somewhat unsettling that there were threats made to our graduation ceremony. So I guess it's sort of coincidence that the SRO contract is happening on the heels of that, if you will. But the way that I look at the SRO contract is it's one component of our overall safety and security plan. And, we did have a handful of residents reach out, not very many, but there was a couple of them that reached out and said that they were concerned. They wanted to make sure that their students were safe, and it's certainly understandable. So I guess that the general discussion point here is, is there any rationale for slightly re-examining the overall security plan that we have, perhaps a security audit, perhaps it's either internal or external. But I just think it's diligent discussion to talk about this now and just double check that we're all good with things, given what we've gone through this semester.
So, security is all, this, as you stated, the SRO contract is just one single portion of our overall security plan. And we have a security or safety in our strategic plan, which I believe Dr. DeKemper covers.
In great detail on e-boards.
Some of it is, in some safety and security situations are purposely not talked about because we don't want to give we don't want to give ideas to bad people. So I do believe that Dr. DeKemper at least biannually walks our buildings with the fire department, the police department, and I'm not sure who else. So I think what you're implying is maybe to kind of pull everything together for a more thorough.
Yeah, I mean, I
Just so
think.
we're more aware of it.
Well, I mean,
and-
I don't feel like I'm unaware. I'm just saying that I think that I mean, when I was looking at this and reviewing it, I couldn't exactly understand the rationale of why there's only 7 SROs with 5 cars. I understand that's been working for us. I don't know how long we've been doing it. I don't know where the suggestion came from originally. But it just really, I mean, personally, I know safety is in the forefront of everybody's mind, but it just really made me pause and try to figure out, okay, I'm deciding if 7 SROs is the right number. You know, I can't tell you that I can make that decision. Or alternatively, or additionally, that the community would just, I believe, they would want us to really go through things with a fine-tooth comb, maybe examine things a little bit more than normal this year, just based off of what we went through.
And if I could interject, I agree. Safety is one of the foremost things we do. That's why we spent so many man-hours on it last week when that threat came in. We had people spend absolute amount of time on there to make sure that our students were safe. And so I think we do so many things, but we don't make that part of one audit or one report, that I think we could do that. We would just need to make public a little bit of what we do. So whether that is our twice a year walk with our schools or our checklist, to see what's out there. Maybe we don't make the checklist public, but we let you guys know what we do and how we do it. We have protocol for if work order goes in, and if it's safety and security, it gets bumped up to the top. So we have all these processes in place that I want to make you guys aware of that we do. And I think it might be a really good idea to take that, put it in, we could change, because we do report that. Dr. DeKemper does report that out twice a year. But it wouldn't hurt to kind of make that part of the forefront of what we do, tighten it up a little bit, and then bring it to your guys' attention. I don't have any problem with doing that. There's a lot of things that are done. Like I said, the matrix for safety related work, the walks in the spring, the assistant superintendent safety walks, the checklist, all of those things that we do to make sure our buildings are safe. I think we could report on that either in the beginning of the year, end of the year, or do it with the strategic plan. I don't have a problem with that. I think we could do that.
I also think that, and I told Tori this on the way home from graduation, if anybody opened up the document that you sent us about graduation, that was, I think, 5 pages long, and the step-by-step process that the cabinet went through and Dr. Hogg led, and in unison with St. Louis County Police, what they did to ensure the safety, not only St. Louis County Police, but St. Louis City Police and also Chaffetz Arena. So I just thought that gave you a nice lens to see how diligent clearly they are when, and of course you have to be in front of all of these problems, not behind them, because being behind them might be a little bit too late. But I mean, I agree. I agree with what you're saying, but I also think I have faith, or I do have faith. I shouldn't say I think I have faith. I have faith that it's one of the utmost priorities. I mean, we say that over and over and over again. That's the number one thing that we want for our students is safety and security.
I have no doubt about that, and
Yeah.
I'm proud. I'm proud. I mean, there was a couple times last year where I specifically talked to Chad about it, and you could tell how important it was,
Right.
just by the way he was speaking about it.
Right.
And I know there's a whole team that is behind us as well. So I'm proud of the effort that we go through to protect our students. I'm just, there was just a lot to unravel
Right.
these last 2 months. And again, as a layman, when I was looking at it, 7 SROs, I'm like, boy, would it be nice to have 9. I don't know, maybe.
I mean, it's
There's one
probably,
problem, though. I mean,
There's-
the SROs come from St. Louis County Police, and as we know, recruitment and retention of police in St. Louis County has not been an upward trend for the last few years. So it would be great to have SROs at every single building, and then every single school has that same idea. St. Louis County can't support that, not without some insanely large increase of staff. That isn't going to happen. So I think that as beneficial as it would be to have additional SROs, I think that we are probably doing best practice with available resources we have from St. Louis County, and as well as the fact that past history has shown that this seems to be the correct number. Whether that changes or not in the future is a good question, but until St. Louis County theoretically has increased resources to provide, we have to work with the confines of what they have available.
Yeah, we don't know what's available.
Right, agreed. So how about this? So I've already made the motion, we've had our discussion. Let's go ahead and vote to approve the SRO contract as presented with the caveat that Dr. Hogg and the cabinet will continue to sort of audit the process of our security and hopefully bring that to us in a more comprehensive way so that everyone understands we are doing the 100%, 110%.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay. No communication people? Anybody invisible out there? No? Okay. If I can get an authorization to close session, please.
Sorry, I got the wrong item. Sorry, it's loading. Motion to enter a closed session meeting for the purpose of reading of minutes of previous meetings and corrections and approval of same and other items under Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, subsections 1 through 21, and 610.022, subsections 1 through 6, lease, purchase, or sale of real estate, section 610.0212, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting particular employees, section 610.0213, and individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employment or applications for employment, section 610.02113, legal action, causes of action, or litigation, section 610.0211.
Okay, Scott?
Yes?
Jeff?
Yes?
Tori?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes,
Jean?
Yes.
Peggy, yes. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?